Hello there, welcome back to yet another Into the Woods update, this time with no new biome. So I probably said this last year when the final Into the Woods update came out, but I want to focus on improving the existing biomes in the mod this year instead of working on brand new ones. So for this first update of 2026, we have a new block right here. This is Deep Slate Recondite Ore. It's just a Deep Slate version of the Recondite Gemstone Ore that you find inside of Enchantment Woods. And because there's now this Deep Slate version, it means that if you go underground in Enchantment Woods past the lush caves and stuff, you'll start seeing more Recondite around here. That's only a single block, so it's not a very good example. But like, for example, this one right here is also naturally generated. So it's actually a bit more common deeper down and higher up, because prior to this being a thing, it did exist more often in the more mountainous areas of the Enchantment Woods. So that is definitely not the entire update, one new ore block. That was just a small minor addition to this update. But the two main biomes that got some new things are the Fallout Forest and the Grim Woods. So let's take a look at what the Fallout Forest adds. It's not much, but it has to do with Metalloy, which is kind of underused in this current version of Into the Woods. So if you were to grab a crafting table, you can now see that you could craft Metalloy nuggets. These are just brand new nugget version of Metalloy ingots, and you can now use them to make chains. As you can see right here, they behave exactly like normal vanilla chains. If you get torches, you could also, let me grab a torch. If you get torches, you could also make a normal lantern and a soul lantern with them. These behave just like vanilla lanterns, they're just a different color. So those are some of the new Metalloy decorative blocks, but there's still a little bit more in the form of new fluorescent lamps. If I get dye and irradiated rods, we'll do black and magenta for an example. You could combine Metalloy, irradiated rods, and dye to make brand new fluorescent lamps. They come in all 16 dye colors, and they're basically just a light block version of the reactor core. This block right here that's used to make the reactor sword, and it now gives a use for the irradiated rods, which used to only be used for the reactor core, which wasn't that useful outside of making one for a sword. You could use these as like little lamps on a Fallout build, like you see right here. This looks pretty cool. Let me put some on this side. There we go, just a mock-up of what you can kind of do with them. So that right there is basically all of the new features for the Fallout Forest. The Grim Woods has probably the most significant changes, so let's go there real quick. Alright, here we are at the Grim Woods. So, as you can see, by not even entering the biome, there's already a difference, which is the grid trees now have a special tree shape instead of just looking like the normal spruce trees with some roots. So if I find a flat spot over here, so let's look at a flat spot over here, and you see if I plant some grim saplings and let's bone meal them. There we go. You can see the Grim Tree now has these little branches with like these smaller canopies on them. But that's really the only change with it, is that they're more dense and have like branches in their canopy. Everything else is the exact same. So now let's get into the Grimwoods so that we could take a look at all of the new stuff within this update. So one of the first things that you might see while you're in the Grimwoods is that the trees have these little blue bits on them. These blue bits are mossy grim logs, so they're basically just a decorative area of the grim logs. So if I get bone meal back out and I bone meal them, you can see that sometimes bone mealing the tree will give you extra logs. But the mossy grim logs, they can only spread up or down, as you can see right here. I believe they're more prone to going down than going up, so you might have to bone meal it a few times if you want it to go up. Let's also get the glaringly obvious thing out of the way. The Grim logs have a new bark texture, and I think that this bark texture looks a ton better than the original one, which was kind of just like this oak log over here, but like darker, more contrasty. Another new feature you might see like hanging from the trees while you're walking around in this biome is these. These are fog bulbs. Fog bulbs are a new semi-decorative, semi-functional block, and you can see right here there's also roots that connect to the ceiling. And if I bone meal it, you'll see that the bulb goes down one and grows a new root. There has to be an air block beneath it though if you want to bone meal it. Like you can see right here, it will stop as soon as I hit the bottom. So these fog bulbs will tick randomly. Let's see if, I mean, they're not really doing it right now, but occasionally they will puff out some smoke and nearby players, yep, you can see right here. Nearby players will get the fogginess effect if they're near a fog bulb that puffs the smoke, and I should also mention that breaking them will have the same effect. As you can see right there. So the fogginess effect will always last for 60 seconds when you get it from a fog bulb. It just makes the area around you extremely foggy. Like you can see, I can barely see a few blocks in front of me, and then you could see like silhouettes of features in the background. So that's most the ambient slash environment updates for the Grim Woods. The rest of the stuff is entirely contained within the shaded keep right here, which you can see right here that this is a new room within the shaded keep. It has some of the ritual pedestals in it with a new block in them called gilded shaded stone. This is mostly just a decorative variant of shaded stone tiles, but these are also used inside of the ritual pedestal to do the rituals that you're used to doing with the ritual altar. Real quick before I continue, let's take a look at the new ritual altar stuff, because there's a decent bit of it in this update. It's mostly just like changes on the back end and a few changes with the altar itself and a new crafting recipe with the altar. So real quick before I start, you could see that there's a better description on the ritual altar on what you're supposed to do with it to craft things. And if I put a diamond in here and I do the ritual, let me light it up some since I get darkness when doing so. So the gilded shaded stone is now consumed instead of regular shaded stone in the crafting recipes for it. And the occultite gem crafted from it, these now have a new texture, as you can see. I'll go over all the texture changes in this update in a little bit. So if you were to get a gilded shaded stone and place it beneath a ritual altar, you could either do this in a crafting table with a occultite gem and a gilded shaded stone, or just by directly clicking on the block. But you will get a runed shaded stone, as you can see right here. This is mostly a decorative variant of gilded shaded stone, but it also makes the rituals that you do here stronger. So as you can see, a new mob just spawned out of there and went up there. But I got 2 occultite gems for the price of 1 from the ritual. So the rune shaded stone will have a chance of increasing the output of rituals, but it can also have a chance of breaking or spawning a new mob when you do so. So real quick, let's talk about the new mob that kind of just floated out of here. So this is a new mob called the Shaded. They spawn inside of shaded keeps at nighttime, but only if the player has the fogginess effect from the fog bolt. So you can see I've just inflicted myself a fogginess. And if I kill this guy real quick. So I've killed the shaded that spawned from the altar, and now I'm gonna inflict the nearby ones with glowing so we can see where they are. So you can see there's one right there and one right there. Okay, that one seems to have despawned. Okay, 2 new ones have spawned in here. Right in the wall over here. So you actually can't see them from the inside because they're both in the wall. Because they behave a little bit like Vexes where they can go through walls. And if I were to go in survival, they will immediately detect me and start flying towards me, as you can see right here. They are actually a really dangerous mob because they could go through walls and attack you through them. And they like to swarm, kind of like Vexes, but faster. They also have quite a bit of health and a lot of attack damage. So yeah, they're pretty dangerous new mob. Killing them also has a chance to drop the occultite gems, like right here. So it's a way for you to get occultite from a shaded keep if the chests don't happen to have one, since you need one to make more. So now let's get on to the last part that's been changed with the ritual altar. If you put an occultite gem in here and the gilded shadestone 4 pedestals around it, and you do the ritual, you'll get two effects, fogginess and cultist. So the fogginess effect's like what we saw before, where you can't really see in front of you and it makes shaded spawn near you. But the cultist effect is a new buff. You can see I'm jumping a little bit higher and moving faster. The cultist effect increases your movement speed and decreases your gravity, along with also increasing your attack damage. So it's a pretty big buff. It does not reduce fall damage though, so if I were to go in survival and jump off of here, I do take fall damage. So you might want like feather falling or something with it if you're going to be jumping a lot. So that's all of the new content in this update, so let's get on to some of the other changes and fixes. So first of all, right here, I have a platform set up with all the textures that have been changed in this update. So the Grim Sapling, as you can see, it now looks more like the newer Grim trees with the branches and stuff. The Grimlog has been retextured to have more like scaly looking bark instead of like normal vanilla tree texture bark. The Occultite gem now looks a bit more like an emerald instead of just a blob. The player detector, the red part for the eyes, now uses a more detailed color palette, just like with the Occultite gem. And same with the ritual altar, now the little red bits are a bit more detailed. So those are all the new texture changes to this update. Let's go to some of the other miscellaneous changes. The first thing that I can't really show off easily is the ambient sound of grim trees now plays a bit louder so you can hear it from farther away, so there should be more creaking in this biome. The second change is that the metallic scaffolding now requires 7 metalloid nuggets instead of ingots, and you get only 1 from it, as you can see right here. Another optimization change is that scraping metalloy, placing plants in pots, and stripping logs should now be less buggy and more consistent so that you can do it in your world. Alright, there's some other smaller changes I'm just gonna zoom through real quick because they're not that important to the main update. The resin logs on sylvan trees are now part of the tree instead of placed on them at the world grid, which should ever so slightly reduce lag. Another new change is that Silver Knights will now spawn the Frost Yeti when they're below half health instead of only when they're below 200 health. The final change is that some Grim blocks now make the same sounds as the other Grim logs and planks and stuff, aka the Netherwood sounds. So yeah, that's pretty much all of the content in this update, and there will definitely be more coming soon.